Hi, everyone. Biohacking Blondes here. We're here today with a super exciting guest, and we have so many questions for her. This is Miss Christina Walsh. She is amazing. She's a New Orleans mama, so from a very cool town that we all love to kind of party into. A great town. But she was living with pelvic floor issues, and she understands the power of transforming pain into purpose. A physical therapist, published researcher, and co-founder of Tighten Your Tinkler, which is an amazing name. We love it. Christina helps women, you'll never forget it. Christina helps women with pelvic floor issues find healing without Kegels or invasive devices. So this is key. We want to ask her all about that. And she draws from her own vulnerable story and decades of professional experience to deliver actionable advice mixed with a message of hope. So hi, Christina. How are you?
Hello, ladies.
Hey.
I am so hyped to be here.
We're
Yes,
so
she has
hyped to
great
have
energy.
you.
She might have more energy than Alex. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of my favorite things that I was listening to y'all's episodes. I was like, oh, I love this energy because I live for this excitement.
I
Yes.
love it. It's the best. So just tell us a little bit about your story and how you came into this whole world of the pelvic floor.
Well, it was circuitous, right? Like, so, like you guys, I found what I do because it's personal, but it wasn't a direct shot. Like, I think subconscious seeds were actually planted in my childhood. I'm the oldest of four kids, and my mom dealt with tons of back pain. And she would constantly be having to lie down and rest her back. And it was because of having kids. She never had those problems before having kids. And I think subconsciously, I guess, as the oldest, the daughter, I wished I could help her. And I didn't know how. I was a child, but I think the seed was planted then. And it sparked my interest in how to help people heal. And that's what brought me into studying physical therapy, graduate degree, master's, all that. And I thought, I'm going to do women's health. I want to take care of moms. I didn't have kids of my own yet. And that's just not where life took me. It took me into orthopedics, it took me into home health. And then I had an orthopedic injury of my own in my neck. And I quickly realized the Western medical system is not where I wanted to seek care for that because it was leading me to a lot of dead ends. So I hopped right on out of that and found an alternative path and went to study craniosacral therapy, which
Ooh.
there's a wonderful school for that, the Upledger Institute in Florida, which you guys probably know about.
Oh,
Oh, wow. Cool. No,
oh,
I didn't never
Uh-huh.
heard that one before. That's amazing.
no. It's
It's
amazing.
wonderful. It's an incredibly holistic healing modality and treatment. And so I went to study that. I kind of dropped everything and it was like, husband, I'm really sorry. We're only halfway through paying back my student loans, but like I gotta go, this is what I want to do. I think somewhere that's kind of it's one-on-one care, it's hands-on, it's healing on multiple planes of the body, it's gentle, it's incredible. And okay, you're like, all right, what does this have to do with pelvic floor, right? Getting there. So life is bringing me to my purpose this whole time, and I just didn't know it. And so then I met the wonderful Miss Jen Lormond, who is now my business partner, exercise physiologist extraordinaire, brilliant woman. And she was looking for healing for birth injuries. I had not had kids yet, and I started treating her. And she said, I love this work you're doing. Come to my personal training gym. I focus on treating moms and postnatal recovery. And I was like, the stars are aligning. And so I set up my practice doing body work in her gym. And then I had a few kids.
Yeah.
And I had treated moms already. So while Jen's birth stories were traumatic, vacuum, fourth degree tears, nightmarish stuff she was still trying to recover from, my births, I had the foresight of like, this is what happens when you get intervention with birth. So I was like midwife, doula,
Yeah.
but guess what? We don't get to control everything in birth, do we? As anyone who's given birth knows. So I had sunny side up deliveries. I had my midwife, I had my doula. By all intents and purposes, a beautiful birth, but it was 26 hours of labor
Wow.
and a sunny side up delivery, back labor. I had all the things I hoped for. I had no medical intervention, but I pushed for 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Ooh.
So I did not tear, but
Wow.
that is the statistical risk for dealing with pelvic floor issues and prolapse later on down the line. And no one tells you this stuff, but
No.
I was blessed to already be working with Jen. She was recovering from much more severe birth injuries, and the two of us went on the warpath to find a better way to treat these issues because she had tried the Kegels. She had tried all the crap that's already out there, and none of it worked to the point she was being referred for major pelvic reconstructive surgery, a huge
Wow.
deal. And she was 36, and she was like, this will not be my story.
Yeah.
And I was recovering from, I can't even call them birth injuries, but I had issues after that first birth, and that was with the holistic approach. So it's just, we represent the
Wow.
full spectrum of what women experience and how so many of us need care in this area, no matter how the birth goes. And we're going to get into, this is not just about giving birth. Pelvic floor health starts way before that. It is impacted by way many more factors in our previous life before we have kids. So then
Yeah.
Jen and I were like, we've got to find a better way because none of this stuff was appealing to us and didn't work. And so we went to a continuing education course, found a new exercise tool that another PT had recently invented. We took it home and dialed in a protocol that was changing our lives and then the women we worked with. And we were like, we're going to change the world with this. And we took on the crazy project of doing a 3-year university research study. Mind you,
Wow.
we are medical clinicians and we did not know what we were getting ourselves into.
Wow.
Yeah.
But
That's
we did it.
crazy.
We did it. There was the results were better than we hoped for, and the women in our research came back and begged us to put it online. And that is
Oh
where
my
Tighten
God.
Your Tinkler was born. And one of them named it for us. We're not that cute and clever.
That's a great name. We'll never
So,
forget it.
so, so, I mean, this is absolutely fascinating. Can we roll back a little bit and
Yeah.
tell the audience what is actually the pelvic floor and what does it do in your body? Why do you have it?
Absolutely. So we love to say that it's not a magical unicorn. It tends to
Yeah.
get treated as some kind of like foreign, weird thing. It's not. It is a sling of skeletal muscle. So it is just a sling of musculature. It holds your guts in from below. So maybe not very glamorous, but that's a real important function. And
Yeah.
so another girl was like, oh, so it's responsible for the 3 Ps, peeing, pooping, and penetration. There
you go.
it is.
Important
That's what
thing.
happens in the pelvic floor. So it is wildly important. And furthermore, it is
Wow.
a functional part of our core support. So it is connected to back pain, to hip pain, to breath, because it's the bottom of that entire core unit. And if
Right.
you watch us on YouTube, I know you can't on a podcast see this, but you will see me teach with this lovely pelvis model all the time
Oh,
because it's really nice to get that perspective. But I know on a podcast, you can't see that. Go to our YouTube channel. We have tons of teaching on all the questions you're probably afraid to Google.
No, but they'll be able to see on Spotify, they'll be able to see our video too.
Perfect.
If you want
Okay.
to show them a little bit, because I feel like
Uh-huh.
when someone describes pelvic floor, I finally came to this is what I made up in my own head. So just it might not be right. But when you're sitting on a horse saddle, like that area, that's your pelvic floor muscle, right?
Perfect.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And
Now,
technically, if you want to get really technical, it's like if you're looking at a textbook, there are
I
different
like it.
muscles with different names. But the pelvic floor is like they use the rotator cuff for the shoulder is a set of 4 muscles.
yeah.
The pelvic floor is a set of multiple muscles. But like here's your looking from the side, here's your lower spine, there's your tailbone, there's
Yep.
your like if you put
Yep.
your hands on your hips, you're putting them here.
Yeah.
Here's the pubic bone where the pelvis comes together in the front. Here's the genitals. And this is all this red stuff.
That's the
This is
pelvic
the bones that you sit on, right? You're exactly
Yep.
right. There's the saddle goes right here. So there's rectum. So this is all that red stuff is the musculature of the pelvic floor.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like not something
Wow.
no one ever really thinks about. I always thought it was something weird. Like I was like pelvic floor. Everyone's like tighten your pelvic floor. I'm like, what are they talking about?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yoga
right.
classes and stuff are in like Kundalini, tighten that pelvic floor. And I'm like, I think I'm doing it, but I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, and you're like introducing one of my favorite soapbox topics perfectly is that it should not be a muscle you have to think about using because
Right.
it never was before it was injured, right? So if
Yeah.
all women are being offered is strengthening options that result in you having to think about it to get it working again. And that is not functional strength. And that is the best that was available before. So I don't believe any any healthcare provider is doing their job without the best intentions. Everybody who gets into healing professions has the best intentions, but they don't know what they don't know. So
Absolutely.
those options were the best thing there was before, you know.
So me that don't know much about the pelvic floor, and this is kind of a new subject to talk about, which everyone should know about. You hear about pelvic floor exercises. That's all that kind of I know about, and probably Molly too, right?
Yeah.
Pelvic floor exercises is what you hear about. Even like they talk about it in Pilates, don't they? Like
Yes.
that pelvic floor. So are you saying that that is not like correct, or you're saying that is not working very well, or what is your take on that? You're actually putting a
Perfect.
different spin to it.
Yes, yes. So our take on pelvic floor exercise is turning it into a functional strength training. So where you're moving the
Okay.
whole body to reactivate the pelvic floor through whole body movement that
Mm.
doesn't have to be a conscious thing anymore. It wasn't
Right.
conscious before it was injured. It shouldn't have to be ever be a conscious thing that your
Mm.
pelvic floor works for you. It should just know what it's supposed to do, but after injury it often doesn't. So ideally, look, Kegels work for some women. That conscious squeezing, almost like you're trying to stop
Yep.
the flow of urine midstream, is a Kegel.
Yep.
And
Yep.
those do work for some women to resolve some very mild pelvic floor issues. And that is great. Like, I am all for women finding what works for them, but it doesn't work for many women, and it ends up causing over tightening, which then makes the symptoms
Mhm.
even worse because
Oh
it is not
wow.
functional. Like, you ladies are clearly like so healthy and fit. I know you exercise. Like, we do not strengthen any other muscle in the body by holding it still and squeezing it and relaxing it. That is insane, but that has been offered to women all this time because it's the best thing anybody knew.
Right.
Um, so subpar at best, harmful at worst, but that's
Wow.
all there was. So, that's why Jen and I were like elated when we found this new exercise tool that's external that provides this cue to the body through movement to get it firing without the conscious piece and without causing over tightening, creating a balanced strength again that works without you having to think about it. It's
Oh
it's
my God.
so life altering.
Oh my gosh. So can regular exercise though help, just any kind of exercise, running, cycling, any of that? Does that all help that area then?
Love this. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is number one tip, listen to your body. So we'll go over all what can be symptoms of pelvic floor issues. A lot of
Yeah.
them are stereotypical, what women are going to think of, and others aren't. So listen to your body. So if you are doing an exercise and any of the list of symptoms that we're going to go through is getting worse, either during or shortly thereafter, that is your body waving the white flag. Please stop. Like, I am not ready for this. I don't have the functional strength for this activity, and continuing to do it will only eventually lead to it getting worse.
Yeah.
So it's about tuning and listening to your body. If you have great functional strength in your pelvic floor and you can do another exercise without increased symptoms, then it probably is helping, not hurting, because your pelvic floor is coming on board subconsciously and it is working through that exercise. But then you're not having symptoms. But
Yeah.
if you're having symptoms during or shortly thereafter, any exercise you're doing, that's your body being like, it's not saying never, it's saying, please stop, not right now. I don't have the strength for that.
Right. So
So
what
what
are,
are the symptoms?
yeah.
Yes. Okay, girl, there is a list, right? Because some of the ones we all think about, pelvic floor, okay, pee leaks.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
definitely. Check
Yes.
that box. So, like,
Yeah.
and that includes all pee leaks. That includes laugh, cough, sneeze, jump leaks. That includes gotta go now leaks. And
Right.
so none of that, that's all pelvic floor problems. That's your pelvic floor saying, hey, I'm not well. Also, getting up in the night to pee is your pelvic floor not being in optimal health.
Hmm.
Anytime you're having pressure or heaviness, like a lot of women report like a feeling of a bulge or like a tampon is stuck or inserted weird down there,
Oh.
that is potentially
Oh,
even progression of pelvic floor issues, which is prolapse. The organs start to kind of fall out of place because they've lost their kind of
oh.
structural support in there because it's all soft tissue up in there. There's no bones holding your bladder in place.
Mm.
So all this is connected. Another thing that is very common is P frequency. And women completely accept that as just the way it is, and it is not. That is one indicator. Is it enough of a problem that you're going to take action to solve it? Maybe not, but check that box. If you're like, I pee more than 10 times a day, I don't care how much water you drink. That is not normal pelvic floor function, and it can be fixed. Another thing is back and hip tightness. Those women who are like, no, my back doesn't hurt, but like I kind of have to constantly stretch it throughout the day. That is core dysfunction, which includes the pelvic floor. If you have a gap from pregnancy, that diastasis recti, and it never came back together, that's another sign that something is off both in your core and pelvic floor, because they're meant to work together. If you are a woman who's chronically overusing your hip flexors, trying to do ab work, why am I always feeling it in my hip flexors? That's because your deep abs and pelvic floor never came back online. So your hip flexors are like happy to help, which is great. They're like these huge whacker muscles who are like, I got you, girl. But like, that's not going to serve you well in the long term if they're doing the job of the smaller muscles that never got rehabbed, because then you're going to have hip impingement, hip compression, hip arthritis all down the line. So, all of this, of course, pain with sex also, that's a pelvic floor issue. That
Interesting.
complicated, another thing you don't have to live with. All of that is in the umbrella of core and pelvic floor dysfunction.
And can I ask a question? So, do you, throughout your life, should your pelvic floor not have any of the issues? Doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter if you've given birth. Or is it actually after you give birth, this is like, okay, that's kind of what happens if you had a natural birth? And also, if you're getting over 50 years of age, you hear it all the time. Like my mom, she died at 80, but I remember for the past 20 years of her life, she was using like a little kind of diaper type things because she was leaking. So is that considered normal, or it's not? It should never be that way. And it can be stopped at all times.
I
It
would
can be
say
reversed.
never normal. Never
Never
normal.
normal.
It's
And it
just a
can always be
matter
reversed. It could always
that
be the
that's a good question. That's a fine line right there. And Jen
okay.
and I are straight shooters. And every time we give women information, it's based on our research. And that is part of why we didn't do it because we were going to have a company. We did it because we thought that was going to be our big splash and that's what was going to change the world. But now we have our data to rely on to tell you, we have a free quiz on our website. If you're like, I've got some of this stuff, but I don't know how bad it is, we took the
Right.
research questionnaires and turned them into a quiz so that we can give you a report that tells you based on your score, here's your next set of action steps to get better. And if your score is over a certain number, we know it's kind of too late for you. And I hate to have to tell women that, but we are straight shooters. So there is a point of no return with some of this when
Right.
things have gotten bad enough where you're going to need to consult a surgeon.
Right.
But that's part of what that quiz is about, because we'll tell you.
And it goes back to being preventative again, right? Same as you
Yes.
should be with your health, your overall health,
Yes.
with
And
everything.
not ignoring those earlier signs, because so
Right.
imagine many women, it starts with like a small little leak here and there. Oh, it's just when I got on the trampoline with my kids. It's not really a big deal. Okay, so then cue the hormone changes of perimenopause in our 40s.
Mhm.
Okay, guess what? Estrogen decreases. Estrogen can decrease by about half by 50 or in our 50s. And when estrogen drops, collagen drops. And we tend to think of that from a vanity standpoint, like, oh, my wrinkles, oh no,
Yeah.
and my saggy face. But guess what? Collagen's also important for the structural integrity of our soft tissue everywhere, including our pelvic floor, that support of our internal organs. So chances are, if it was just a little leak before,
It's a biggie.
often the tipping point is perimenopause and that journey through our 40s, where if we ignored it for all those years before and just thought, oh, I'm sure it'll go away, guess what? It doesn't go away, it gets worse.
Mhm.
So
I've
there
heard that
is,
story a lot, actually. I've got
yeah,
a couple of friends who they're like, all of a sudden, I'm I'm like, I'm peeing myself. Like, what the heck? I had two babies, 15 years ago or whatever, and it's like all of a sudden it's coming back. And I took the
yes,
quiz too, so which I thought was really interesting because I was so kind of clueless about the pain that's involved too.
yes.
Like I didn't ever had pain, but of course, like if I'm jumping on a trampoline, I'm definitely gonna have a problem. Like that.
Not alone.
Like right after I had my daughter, I remember like a year later, I tried to do this really hardcore boot camp where I was doing like burpees and I like
Oh,
completely peed myself. Like it was
mhm.
horrible. It was so it was in
No.
a group class. Thank God I had black pants on and I just kind of walked out like I was Like,
Yeah. Well,
okay, I'm not clearly not ready for this. Yeah.
and and that was smart. So you did listen to your body. So that's the first step, is to not push through it. Like
Yeah.
if you're pushing through that and going, well, it's not a big deal. Okay, maybe it's not, but like every time you push through it, you're certainly not helping, and you're probably hurting your chances of it getting worse over time. So you're pausing that and realizing like, okay, my body's not ready for this, was your first right step right there,
Yeah.
as opposed to just being like, oh, well, guess I'll just keep doing this.
Yeah.
Wear a
Because
thicker
also
pad.
your pants are wet, so you have to leave. Like you have no choice.
Right. Right.
You're literally like, okay,
Right.
now I need to go and hide in my car.
Right. Well, and look,
I got a call. I got a business meeting.
Yeah, like I gotta get out of here. Like, yeah.
right. Well, the good
God.
news though, y'all, is that we work with women past menopause, well through perimenopause,
Yeah.
in their 60s. And well, okay, one thing that does get hard for those ladies, honestly, is just interacting with the digital program. Some of them have a hard time with that from a tech standpoint, because our offering is online for accessibility, so we can reach the world with this healing. But there does become a hurdle of tech at some point for some women as far as age. But the women
Yeah.
who are tech competent, we've absolutely changed lives well into their 60s, even into their 70s in person, because our bodies are healing machines, right? Y'all know this. This is what biohacking is all about. So like when we can tap into that natural desire, that want, that movement, that energy, our bodies want to heal, they want to support us, and we just gotta kind of nudge them in the right
Yep.
direction.
Yeah.
And so when you find the
Yep.
way to do that, which we have with the pelvic floor, it does it. It's amazing how little it takes to create this incredible upward trajectory of positive change. And women, literally, my last birth was 37 years ago. She writes us, I had 3 kids. They were huge babies. I thought I would never live without these issues, and they're healed now. And I sleep through the night, and I don't have to worry about
Wow.
where the next bathroom is. And I can't believe this is better after all these years. So age is not the determining factor of what too late looks like for you to recover. Severity of symptoms can be, but that's what that quiz is
Right.
about, and it will tell you and direct you to the right place. We've got a whole page of referrals if you're past that point of being able to be helped with a conservative approach.
Cool. We'll definitely
Yeah.
link to the quiz too, because I think people would find that really
Yeah.
super helpful. And then you kind of
Oh,
dive
yeah,
into
and
the
interesting.
program, and I think that's like amazing.
Yeah, and it's 5 minutes. So it's very
Yeah.
eye-opening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Go
So
ahead.
I'm dying to hear about these little special magic tricks. What should we be doing here? Can we get into like the real juice here?
Yes. Okay, so first thing you can
Tell us.
start doing, there are so many things aside from joining our program, which that is what you will have to do to get the functional strength back. But before you get there, the first thing we teach you in the program is a set of relief techniques, because we have to take the pressure off the pelvic floor before we can heal it with functional strength. It's a twofold approach. So
Ah,
some of the relief techniques you can begin implementing now. And then you can determine, okay, all right, I've started this, I've made a little progress, but it's not enough. Now I really want to heal. And that's where you jump in the program, you add the functional strength, and then you can identify with all the testimonials and be like, holy moly, I can't believe I'm this much better. But before that, start with the low-hanging fruit. Start with getting yourself some proper toileting stools. If you don't have those around every toilet in your house, the
hmm,
squatty potty.
Yep. I have
hmm.
one
Tell us
Yes.
about that.
for everyone.
What is that?
So this is about ergonomic emptying, right? Ergonomic
Oh,
toileting.
let's
And it,
see
How we
it really
those.
works.
how we used to go to the bathroom like as cave people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's anthropologically, we didn't have Western toilets. It was on the ground. Now, while I'm personally glad we're not toileting that way anymore, there's there's something to that deep squat position. It puts both your bowel and your bladder in a more optimal position to empty fully and without straining,
Ah,
because we should not have to be straining. So keeping a good consistency of your bowel movements is incredibly important for overall pelvic floor health. Think about every time you have to strain to poop. What is that doing to your pelvic floor?
Yeah.
And it's a one unit. It is one unit. Remember, peeing, pooping, and penetration,
Right.
it's all in
Yeah.
the same unit. So every time
Mhm.
we're straining to poop, we're not gifting our pelvic floor. And
Mhm.
when we're trying to do things like shave off a few seconds and straining to pee, like, oh, to get this out real quick, toddler's banging at the door, my next appointment's coming up.
Right.
That actually causes retention of urine. So don't push your pee out.
Oh, oh,
Relax your pee
Oh,
out.
I definitely do that.
So
I
don't do
definitely.
that. Don't do that.
wow.
So
Yeah.
pushing to
That's it.
pee, it causes retention of urine, which actually sets you up in the long run for increased risk of urinary tract infections and less severe. You're going to have to go pee again sooner anyway. You're more likely to have to get up at night to pee because you're leaving some urine in that bladder all the time. So relax your pee out,
Oh,
put your feet up
okay.
on the squatty potty and breathe and relax. If you feel like it's still a struggle to relax it out, exhale while you're peeing or pooping. Kind of blow out the candles. You can even rock side to side. Depending on your history of injury down there, that might kind of change the angles of things to let it fully empty a little
Oh,
more. All of
oh,
these is a simple kindness you can do to your body how many times a day? That's a gift to your pelvic floor and
yeah.
can set yourself up for
The,
healing and relief.
Hmm.
those are great little hacks. So the little stool you should buy. I think I've seen that. You got that, Mommy? The little
I have
stool
one.
for your
Yep. It's
legs?
just a little stool and
Oh,
you put your legs up on it so you're in more of a squat position when you're going to.
Yes, totally. Thank
right.
you. Thank you for adding that context. I
Yes.
always forget that not everyone
Yes.
has one because they've been in my bathroom for so long.
I
And look, the good news is they have cute ones now. They used to just
yeah.
be like this ugly white plastic
Plastic.
medical looking device. They have like teak wood.
Ah,
They can be pretty
okay.
now too, which is nice.
Okay.
Can
And
match
then
your
the
bathroom
the other
decor.
old thing that you always yeah, the other thing that you always hear is from like when I was young is like don't hold your pee. Like don't
Yeah.
wait to go to the bathroom. Is there something to that as well that is really bad for your pelvic floor to hold it in?
I wouldn't make it a
Or not necessarily?
chronic habit
Oh,
because what that is
right.
doing then is that like almost that chronic bracing. It's almost like a chronic Kegel, which if you're
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
that every day, all the time, can lead to kind of spasming and over tightening, which is a
Okay.
huge
Okay.
problem that many women deal with is that over tight pelvic floor, which an over tight muscle does not function well either. So that's part of healing the
Right.
pelvic floor is stretching, releasing, which is another thing you can begin doing today with our free at home 90-90 decompression, we call it. So it's an anti-gravity position. You put your body in, no special equipment required, and you are giving your pelvic floor, your hips, and your back the gift of an anti-gravity treatment. It's a little self-adjustment you do at home. And at the same time,
Mm.
this is rest multitasking for all my go-getters, my doers, my type A'ers, my I can't lie still for 5 minute ladies. I,
Alex.
hard, but look, this is rest multi. Check so many boxes off your list. Put in your favorite podcast or do your meditation app while you're laying in this position. And then you're also decompressing your nervous system at the same time. Just this little cheat of putting your body in this quick position. I'll give you the link. This is taking care of your pelvic floor because the pelvic floor is connected to the nervous system too. So if we are not decompressing the nervous system, we're not going to fully cure the P frequency and the P urgency because it's all connected to that kind of over tightening, the guarding, which we're pushed into, right? Either through injury or through
Yeah.
a high stress lifestyle, history of anxiety, gotta go, there's never enough time. All of that over time is like there's a lot of guarding and squeezing and tightening, and
Yeah.
we have to undo that. But it can be undone gently without anything invasive or painful through simple techniques like lying in this position at home, do some breath work. It's 5 to 10 minutes, and you're accomplishing so much for your body in that time. And
Ca-
these are
ca-
the places to start.
Can you describe the position? Can we go
Yes,
through that?
yes,
What is it?
totally.
Yes.
So get the free teaching because there's some nuances to getting it right for every different body, which we walk you
Okay.
through in the teaching video. But the basic
Yeah.
idea is you're laying on your back on something soft, yoga mat at least, and you've got your knees and your hips bent at a 90-degree angle in a supported position. So this could be
Okay.
the edge of a bed, an office chair if it's not rolling away from you, a couch, an ottoman, a coffee table. So you have adequate support under your calves and you've got your butt at the right position so that you've got a 90-degree angle at the hips and a 90
Yeah.
degree angle at your knees. and
Yeah.
you're resting in a very supported position. So you're offloading your pelvic floor, your back, your hips, and your nervous system all at once.
Ah,
Nice.
that's
Very
cool.
nice. Okay.
It's
Yeah,
so
that's super
good.
cool.
It's
It's a
so
little
good.
bit like,
That
you know
feels
how people
great.
say put your legs up the wall, and that's
Yes,
like that's
Yeah.
similar, but it's you have to bend your knees
it's
in
a
order to
tweak.
take the weight off.
And you
So
also have
it
to have support
Yeah,
under the legs,
under your
right?
legs. Yeah, totally. And so I love legs up a
Yeah.
wall. So that is getting to the nervous system piece. So if your interest is in the nervous system piece, legs up a wall is all you need.
Yeah.
If your interest is in physically taking the pressure off of your back, hips, and pelvic floor, then do this decompression position because that is that self-adjustment. But again, that nervous system piece can be accomplished with just the legs up a wall also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great tip. That's a great way to just
Very good.
relax for a few minutes, and now
Yes.
you can rest your pelvic floor too just by bending the knee.
Yeah.
That's a
Totally.
Yeah.
And by
great
using
tip.
a squatty potty and not pushing your pee out. I mean, these things, think how many times a day we're doing this stuff. It adds up.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Love it.
And what,
Totally. And it's
you
about
know,
creating new habits, right?
yes. And
So,
Yeah.
one more super easy thing, like we already talked about listening to your body. If we went through the list of symptoms, if any exercises you're doing are causing flare-ups, that is again your body saying, please not now. And pushing through it is not going to do you any favors. Another thing you can tune into where listening to your body is concerned is what you're wearing. So this is shocks a lot of women, but if you felt this, you're going to be like a little bell is going to go off in your head. If you're wearing something that's too tight around your waist or your middle, that pressure goes somewhere and it goes down.
Mm.
And so wearing something, if
oh,
you wear a pair of compressive workout pants or even underwear and you take it off at the end of the day and you're like, why is there this like indent in my skin? Or you notice like, why does my back feel tight or my hips are aggravated or like I just feel this pressure or heaviness or you notice your P frequency or urgency gets worse. Even just adding pressure around your middle can increase pelvic floor issues. So that just goes back to tuning into your
interesting.
body.
Yeah.
Totally.
And wearing
Totally.
comfortable clothing as much as you can.
Yes. Oh my God. And size up. Like it's
Yeah.
not a vanity thing. Nobody sees the
No.
tag. Like
Turn
size
off the
up.
tag if you are so triggered by it, right? Like just
Yeah.
take the tag off and buy like cheap things that fit you, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's super. So women that have not had natural births, are they less likely to have pelvic floor issues?
This is such a y'all are good. Okay, so pelvic floor issues, it is statistically your greatest risk comes from giving birth, but also
Okay.
just from pregnancy. And there's a whole list of other things that can set you up to be at risk for pelvic floor issues, which we'll go through. But first, births, that's the first
Yeah.
thing. Certainly,
Yeah.
just carrying a baby to full term, your
Yeah.
body, all the relaxin, right? Everything is meant to stretch and separate and spread, and it's supposed to do that. But it's like carrying a bowling ball on your pelvic floor for 9 months. So I don't care
Yeah.
how that baby comes out. Your pelvic floor has already been through a lot,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
so it's the greatest risk factor for pelvic floor issues, pregnancy and birth. However, this really helps women connect a lot of dots, and nobody is talking about this stuff. So many other things affect your pelvic floor health over a lifespan. For instance, if you were a kid who grew up with chronic asthma and coughing,
Mm.
every one of those, think about
Mm.
it,
Yep.
right? If anybody is listening got
Mm.
leaks, guess when they flare up most? When you're coughing and sneezing. So
Yep.
all that
Mm.
lifetime of coughing and sneezing, pressure, 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 and the
Mm.
pelvic floor is like spasming to try to hold everything in every time that's happening.
Yes.
Also, a lifetime of chronic constipation. If you've had bowel issues and you have a history of having to strain and strain every time you're having a bowel movement over decades,
Yeah.
that is another factor. So
Mhm.
I bring all this up because it's a compassionate view for
Mhm.
yourself of like living with these issues is so emotional, and women often turn inward and go, why me? Why did this happen to me? I did everything right. I exercise, I eat healthy, and I gave birth this way or that way. I did everything I could. And the thing is, just I hope women feel validated by hearing all of these different angles of how this can happen. And
Yeah.
again, I had natural births, and guess what? I couldn't control that sunny side up delivery, the 2.5 hours of pushing. Jen, my business
Wow.
partner, couldn't control that she had asthma as a child. And so
Yeah.
all those things, along with a history of sexual abuse or birth trauma, all
Oh.
put us at risk for dealing with this stuff later, even before we go through pregnancy and childbirth. So
Yeah.
no, you're not alone. 52 million women in this country alone are dealing with this stuff. And just because this is one of those pains that you can't see, right? Like so
Mhm.
many pains. We look around and it's easy for us to go out in the mall and the park and the playground and look at every other mom and go, well, she's not dealing with this. But have you asked her? Yeah.
Right.
So let's pull
Right.
pull the playground and see.
Yeah.
At 40%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can,
Yeah.
can I just ask something too? So I actually had to put it on ChatGPT because I thought I'd embarrassed myself. So I actually did it just now. Men have a pelvic floor too,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Do
they
they have
do.
problems too, also? And like if they're straining, if they're constipated, then they
So
could.
men are most
Yeah.
likely to have urinary or erectile dysfunction through prostate issues, whether that's BPH, that benign prostatic hypertrophy, which is that kind of non-cancerous overgrowth of the prostate that happens to many men later in life. Sometimes it causes urinary retention and continence issues. And then often men who end up having prostate cancer and surgery, not always, but often end up with some kind of urinary dysfunction, leaks, lack of control, less satisfying orgasms, which women deal with all the time after birth, and nobody's talking about either, which is another thing you can get better. This is like, these are the icing on the cake pieces, the improved orgasms. We haven't even
Ooh,
gotten to
tell us
that.
about that one.
Oh
I
yeah.
want to
Oh
hear
yeah.
that.
But
Men
men
get
often do deal with this stuff, but it's much less frequent because it's happening only in these scenarios of very often prostate surgery, cancer surgery, and that sort of thing.
got it. Okay,
Okay.
interesting.
Okay. Interesting.
So
Okay. Yeah.
but if they are like constipated or something like that and constantly
Yeah.
pushing, then that could potentially cause an issue.
Maybe, but less common for them. It's just
Okay.
it's a different
Okay.
setup.
Got it.
It's a
Okay.
different setup. Right. Okay. Okay.
They're
Okay.
not
Yeah.
as sensitive
All
down
right.
there. Yeah,
Okay.
I hear you.
Yeah.
But
No.
what
Yeah.
about
Okay.
lymphatic
So
drainage and you know the you call it the hypertonic pelvic floor. So tell us a
Yes.
little bit about that. How does it help with the lymphatic flow?
So the hypertonic pelvic floor is what every time I've mentioned, like it can get over tight
Yeah.
from high anxiety or too much Kegeling or, trauma or injury. That over tight muscle is not a functional muscle. That over tight doesn't mean strong. It's also weak. So that's what a hypertonic pelvic floor is.
Yeah.
And many women are dealing with this. And what happens here is, so we have different diaphragms in the body, we could say functionally, like tissue that kind of divides our body crossways. Breathing diaphragm is one of those things. Pelvic floor, hip, pelvis is another. So if we have an over tight area down there, that is the throughway, right? Our pelvis and thighs and hip is the throughway of all the lymphatic drainage for our whole leg. So
Mhm.
if we are tight and
right.
spasming and guarded and everything is grabbing through there, and then maybe we've had some kids and some of our organs have kind of fallen a little bit down, we get what's called pelvic congestion. And none of that vasculature is free to flow like it used to be. And that can cause swelling in the legs. It can even lead to nerve symptoms, but it can absolutely impair the return of the lymphatic system from the leg all the way back up to
Oh,
that central circulation. So we
yeah.
love dry brushing for lymphatic care. We love vibrational plates are another wonderful gift to the body. Recent research on those has even shown improvements in bone density from vibrational plates.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So vibrational
Which
plates.
one do you use?
Oh
Which
gosh,
one do
I
you
forget
recommend?
the name of it. It's like been so long. It's linked on our favorite things page on our website.
Okay.
It's on Amazon. But so
Perfect.
love the
Perfect.
vibrational plate,
Yep.
love dry
Yep.
brushing. And then if you get that
Yep.
functional strength back and you've got that natural lift back down there again, it's incredible. Just or do that decompression position. Just
Yeah.
lay in that. Guess you're going to offload all the weight and the heaviness and the tension, and you're going to free that path for that vasculature to return the flow back to the central
Nice.
circulation again. I mean, it's all connected, right?
Yeah. What do you think of a
Of
rebounder?
course.
Like a rebounder where you're jumping on a trampoline. Like how is
Trampoline.
that
Yes.
helpful or is that pushing the
It
feet?
depends on the condition of your pelvic floor,
Right. Okay.
right? So if you've got great functional strength down there and you can do some rebounding and you're not having any increase in that laundry list of symptoms that we talked about, then your pelvic floor is strong enough to tolerate it. And that can be a wonderful aid in lymphatic
Mhm.
return. But
Yep.
if your
Mhm.
body's waving that flag
Mhm.
going, this is not good for me right now, and I'm trying to tell you,
Right. So is that
then
sign like pee, like if you're peeing or no?
any of the stuff we talked about earlier.
Okay.
So like leaks, increased back or hip pressure or tightness, downward heaviness. If you start to feel physical gapping of the labia, like it's getting drafty down there, you don't have the structural support you need to
Nasty.
tolerate that activity. Yeah. All of that can happen. So those are
Wow.
your body's ways of saying,
Wow.
please stop.
Okay. And then back pain too. So a lot of women have
Yes.
back pain. So
Yes.
that could potentially be all part of that picture. And if,
Yes.
why do I have this problem? Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Because all those
Mm.
muscles worked together without us having to think about them before they were injured. Our deep back extensors, our hip rotators,
Mhm.
our deep abdominals, and the pelvic floor are a functional unit when they're toned and working well. And something we don't have to think about squeezing,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. No
Right.
Kegel.
Right. What about like really tight hip flexors? Is that kind of like an issue? Or
Yeah, well, right. So
is
Asking
that
that,
for
an
a
issue
friend,
in
asking for
this?
a friend.
asking
Huh?
for a friend, I heard somebody who might have these. Yes, so that is one of those times where your body is like, hey, I got you, girl. I mean, I remember in our dissection lab in physical therapy school, the hip flexor is a huge muscle. So it is powerful and it is ready to
Yes.
jump in and help when your deep abs or your pelvic floor or your little hip rotators aren't toned and functionally strong and turned back on. Your hip flexors are more than happy to help and they will jump on and they will do
Wow.
the job. But guess what? Over time, that causes hip compression, chronic hip flexor tightness. It causes lumbar compression because the hip flexors cross over those lumbar segments. So it can present as hip flexor overuse can present as front of the hip pain and tightness. It can present as chronically feeling your hip flexors instead of your abs during ab work, classic ab exercises, and it can present
Mhm.
as back compression and pain.
Hmm.
Mm.
It's all just
Interesting.
because nobody has helped the body to volley the control of the core and the support of the core back to those smaller muscle groups that were meant to do that job. And the hip
Right.
flexors just got used to
Right.
doing it. And now it's this pattern that's stuck.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and it's also a problem if you run a lot. Like if you run a lot and
Yes.
don't stretch, yeah, and I mean I'm asking for myself, obviously.
Right. Well,
The
so
cat is out of the bag.
yes. And so
Yeah.
part of recovering strength, functional strength in the core, and this is all incorporated in the simple program that we teach, but you can do some of this at home with your exercise. Like if you're not having terrible pelvic floor issues and you're like, God, I just want to turn this hip flexor off, strengthen your outer glutes. And again, that's part of our program, but you can do that in
Right.
isolation too. Strengthen the outer hip muscles because that's going to help take pressure off those front of the hip muscles, the hip flexors, which are doing too much. So there
Mm.
are some simple tweaks and adjusts. And if you're done exercising and you're like, holy crap, my hip flexors, lay in that decompression position for 5 to 10
Mhm.
minutes and give them
Mhm.
that gentle cue that like, hey guys, you can turn off now. We're cool. I don't
Thanks.
need you anymore. Like take a break
Mhm.
and then it'll stop the cycle of it. Well, it's not going to stop the cycle of them getting overused by doing that, but it will stop it from them further compressing your hip throughout the rest of the day.
Mhm. Mhm.
So can you talk
So
about your program too? Oh, sorry. Did you have another question for her about that?
no, 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 no. You go
Okay.
first.
I was curious about like the length of your program, and I'm sure people are thinking the same thing because I'm like, oh, how do I like get in on this? So how do I like
Yeah.
where do you start? How long does your program take? Like give us all the juice on that.
Totally. So it's just through our website. And the best place to start is our quiz
Mhm.
because we want to know before we recommend anyone to join it that they're the right fit. So take the quiz first, and you're going to get that report that says, here's what you can expect based on where your symptoms are. Here's
Mhm.
what we recommend you do next. And that's really important to us that we're not guiding anyone in a direction that's not safe for them or that we wouldn't recommend. And that's what that quiz helps to sort. So take the quiz first.
Mhm.
It's on our websites, Instagram, everywhere. And then if you get that report that says you're a good fit to get better without surgery or, with a conservative approach, We link you to tons of education and resources like our YouTube channel. We want you to make a choice that you feel confident in. If you opt for our program, it's something you do at home. You start with those relief techniques. You'll learn a little bit more in depth about toileting positions. You'll learn other decompression positions. You'll learn more relief tools first. You'll take some self-assessments, and then you'll be walked through the therapeutic exercise series. And it is done with an exercise tool that is fully external, that does not ever touch or come into contact in any way with your tender lady bits.
Nice.
And you're going to learn a full body movement series that, combined with this simple tool, reactivates the muscles of the deep hips, the low back, deep abs, and the pelvic floor to work as a unit through daily movement that you no longer ever have to think about consciously squeezing to have on your side again. And it's a 10-minute movement series that you can repeat as much or as long as you need to forever. And you have lifetime access to that, as well as the support we provide through a private community for members only, which we are constantly pouring into multiple times a week. We're coaching in there live once a month. You can ask questions. We call it a DIY program. Just, you can't call us on the phone, but we're there and we're walking women through it, because depending on where you fall on this spectrum of severity, some women are like, I don't need the private community. I got this. I'm just going to follow the steps and get better on my own. But if it's gotten to a certain degree, the emotional journey is just as important, because also through my bodywork practice, I know we store a lot in our pelvis as women. We store past trauma, we store grief. And when we start to change things down there, it is liberating and freeing and empowering, but you can also unearth some stuff that you need support to walk through. So, I mean, we cry together, we support each other. We're there live for you. And because, again, depending on where you are and how bad this has gotten, I mean, if it started to impact your intimate life with your spouse,
Right.
it's a big deal to heal at your center. So you can do it more independently or with more support, and you have lifetime access to all of that if you opt to walk that path with us. And we want you to feel good about that choice. So whether it's doing that deep dive with us on YouTube, sending us an email, taking that quiz, we want women to find the path to relief that feels aligned for them, because it's a vulnerable area to heal, but it's so incredible to recover here. It has a positive ripple effect in our confidence and our posture and the rest of our life.
Yeah. And do you also do private sessions too on top of the?
We don't currently.
Okay.
But, it is something, I don't know, it hasn't worked out as a viable delivery system, because we can reach more women this way, and we've dialed it in through research and experience, and we know what we can promise women. We know the protocol, we have the data. If you do X, Y, and Z, this will happen for you, and we don't have to be there, and we can hold your hand digitally as much or as little as you like through that private community support. And it just works.
You guys are like, we did all the research. We already know what works. We don't need to really see you. Like, just hop online and
and then connect with other women as much as or as little as you need to in that community, because the women in there are gold. I mean, they've walked the path, and they're going to come and they support each other. We do coaching in there. It's really special.
I love that. Well, tell us a little too. Like, I brought my cooch ball, because some people have there's all sorts of tools out there for pelvic floor management and for incontinence and all these other things. So this one, you're supposed to sit on it for 3 minutes a day. What do you think of this one?
Okay, I love that y'all are bringing this up, because on the one hand, I'm like, girl, you do you, like, find, and on the one hand, I'm like so excited that there's all these options available for women, right? On the end, I want everyone to choose what's right for them. On the other hand, I get so aggravated at these devices and the false claims that they make that sound very much like the claims that we've made, but they're not true. So, you go onto the website for instance, that device, and so they're onto a tiny portion of what you learn in a comprehensive get to the root of it and fix it program like ours. They're onto a tiny portion of it. So I'm not going to, it's not worth throwing out completely. What it can do is it can begin with breath work to add some direct force to that area, which again, you don't have to do that. For some women, that's traumatic and painful. If you've had
Yeah.
stitches or you've been abused, like you don't want anything
Mm,
doing that. So if it's painful, don't do it. And it doesn't have to be that way. If you love it,
mm,
what that's getting to is that beginning of softening that hypertonicity for
Mm.
those women who have that
mm,
overtight pelvic. So
mm,
I understand where they're coming from, and it's not totally wrong. But you go on the website and it claims to add functional strength. How is it adding functional strength? There's no exercise.
No. Kidding.
So it's providing some kind of release. But again, for many women, it's going to be painful. For many women, that could be re-triggering if they've been abused or had birth trauma. So
Yeah.
you know yourself and know your body and trust, make sure you vet and trust the place where you're receiving care for such a vulnerable area. So
mm,
that's
Totally.
not, it's not
mm,
total crap
mm,
again, but
Yeah.
some of the claims that they're
mm.
making are not founded and it's not right for everybody
Yeah.
because of the directness of that treatment and how it could be painful or triggering. Does that
Totally.
make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Mm,
And the same is it
mhm,
similar with the
mhm.
Fit wand? That was like that big, it was, I remember it came out a long time ago and it was like this big Canadian thing that then the US bought. And it's just a little, it looks like a dildo basically, and
Yes.
red light on it, right? And then
Yeah,
you just,
which I mean, we're all in agreement about the benefits of red light. Like,
yeah,
absolutely, like that's not in
Yes.
question at all. Like, so on the one hand, again, on the one hand, I'm like, isn't it great that there are all these options? And you
yeah,
read the reviews on these things, and many women have been helped by it. So that is awesome. Like, if that's what you're called to do that thing. However, you know, I don't really have any interest in penetrating myself with and if you have little kids and
yeah,
you'd like to you'd like to heal this area, how hard is it to find the time to go in your room by yourself, take your
for
clothes
10
off,
minutes or yeah,
shove something up there? And again, if that tissue has been traumatized, that is not a safe way for you to do this. Again, but for some women, they're like, "Oh my God, I love this thing." Well, that's great. Like, keep
yeah,
doing it if it's working for you. However, yeah, the women who come to work with us have tried those devices or are not willing to try them.
yeah,
And they want something that's fully external that they can do with their clothes on, with their kids present,
Yeah.
that
yeah,
feels good to do, that's never going to be triggering, that doesn't hurt.
yeah,
Those are the women who end up working with us. So I'm all for every woman finding what they feel called to, especially to heal a vulnerable area like this. But take everything, on that website, it says non-invasive. Like,
it's pretty invasive.
how is that non-invasive? Like, that's where I just get so angry. I'm like,
Right,
how is
right.
that non-invasive?
Well, what is the definition of invasive? Like cutting you open? Yeah, no,
Well,
Right.
it's
What's
not that
invasive then?
invasive,
Right.
but it's
right. I mean,
like
to me, like shoving something that's pretty invasive. So like this is where I get so aggravated. I'm like, we say non-invasive, but like we actually mean it.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
hysterical.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Right.
You
No, I
Oh
can see how
goodness.
that could be problematic for people. I hadn't really thought of that before too. Yeah. So I mean, obviously your
Yeah.
approach is so, yeah, so great. Like this sounds like kind of a godsend for people who are really struggling with this issue, you
This
know.
is the words women share with us all
More
the time.
holistic. It seems very
It
holistic
is
in a sense of
incredibly holistic. Yes, and it appeals to women who are interested in functional strength. Like there's a whole movement around that. Like
yeah.
so it appeals to a certain woman. And again, we don't claim to be the right fix for everyone, just as much as that hoo-ha wand is not the right fix for everyone.
Yeah.
But if you hear nothing else, if you're dealing with these issues, hear hope, hear I don't have to live like this forever, and hear
Yeah.
take action before it gets to a surgical referral, because
Yeah.
Yeah.
then there's no turning back. So
Yeah.
yeah, listen to your body, honor it, and when you decide you've had enough, it doesn't have to be like that. It just
Yeah.
doesn't.
So you've given us a lot of tips today, but what is the one tip people could take away from today? Like, let's say if they're just starting to have some like pee issues or things like that. What's the best tip that you think they should take away?
Number one is pay attention to what your body's telling you.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've talked about already, like I do not ever advise whether it's physical pain or symptoms, pelvic floor symptoms in the form of leaks. If your body is leaking or hurting, it's saying, please stop. It's not saying keep going.
Mm.
Because if
Hmm.
you ignore that sign long enough, you will absolutely be making it worse by pushing through it.
Mm.
So listen to your body and honor it. And it can be scary to tune in and realize, okay, wait, maybe this has actually gotten worse than I thought because I just got used to it and I accepted this as my new normal. And actually
Hmm.
to look at it in the eyes and say, actually, this is really impacting how I show up as a mom, as a spouse,
Hmm.
is 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 emotional. So when you feel you have the courage to look it in the face and say, I don't want to live like this anymore, you know, take that, honor your body that way.
Yeah.
You know,
Amazing.
it's funny because again, I think both Molly and I, this is not an area that we know a lot about or we haven't really focused a lot attention to, right? So like for example, because in holistic, let's say, a lot of people come to Molly and they say, well, like I have pain here and I have headache once a week and I'm tired, but it's kind of normal. Okay.
Right,
So
exactly.
you understand, but it's kind of normal. That's the way it
Like,
is, right? I'm fine. That's the way it is. Okay.
like no.
So let's say, so my question to you is this, okay, okay, so let's say you actually have to go to the bathroom and pee. But what happens is you're not going to the bathroom and pee, but instead actually you end up sneezing. Okay. But your bladder is full. So in this instance, is it normal that it leaks a little bit, or is it not normal at all? It should never leak. So although
Correct.
you are totally filled up with pee, you're ready to go and pee, and you're
Right.
sneezing, or you're jumping with your kids on that trampoline, but you really need to be on the back. You overdue. It's still not normal to leak even a tiny bit.
Correct. And now
Okay,
I
that's
will tell you,
interesting.
after the two sunny side up deliveries I've had and all the prolonged pushing and all the rehab that I've done in this area, I can jump on a trampoline, I can sneeze with a full bladder and not leak. But
Okay.
there is still a threshold past which I would have problems. But the great news there is that even though life keeps happening and something may push you over the edge, like what happened one time, we were hiking with on a family trip, and I knew I shouldn't be carrying my 60-pound kid for very long because that just adds so much compression and
Oh.
pressure and heaviness. But he was really fussy, and we were with my in-laws, and like, all the family dynamics, and it's like, oh my, he
Hmm.
was screaming and melting down, and everyone was walking in. I ended up carrying him way longer than I should have, and I knew it. And I
Yeah.
knew I was going to pay for it in some way or another. Pressure,
Uh-huh.
heaviness, leakage, pain. I don't
Ah.
remember, but guess what? In that moment, even though I know, okay, I'm pushing my body past its ability to cope right now, I then don't have to lapse into terrible fear of what the rest of this vacation is going to be like for me because I get back to the house, I lay in my decompression position, I do my exercises every morning for the next 3 days in a row, and I'm completely fine again.
Yeah.
Okay, super interesting. That brings me to a point of my mother again. I'm Scandinavian, okay? And she comes back in my head here a lot. When I was little, she told me, as a woman, you should never carry heavy things because it affects your down below parts, okay?
No way.
So,
Amazing. I
it,
mean, so
Wow.
she felt that, and it
oh,
does.
I mean, this coming into she's talking to me right now. She's in heaven.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
this is, I remember so well. And she said, we should never, don't carry that heavy thing as a woman. So
Mm.
And
that's
so
true.
part of the reset of our program and we walk women through is a list of do's and don'ts where we've got to set you up for success to functionally re-strengthen these small muscles. And part of that means taking the loads off of them so that they can gain that strength. It's like the first 30 days are very important reset period with us. So
Ah.
you're going to be instructed during that first 30 days specifically to not push or carry anything heavy for any prolonged period of time because part of that is
Ah.
so you're going to be laying in that decompression position. You're going to be dialing in your toileting postures. You're going to be optimizing your fiber and hydration, and you're going to be adding strength. But if we don't offload the small muscles we're trying to reprogram and re-strengthen, the results won't be as good. So yes,
Ah.
yes,
So,
adding. Mhm.
so even like back in the gym where, a lot of women lift very heavy weights,
Yeah. That's what I was
kettlebells,
thinking.
or, that might be an issue too if you don't have kind of the structural set up.
Yeah.
Yes, if you don't have functional strength in your undercarriage and your pelvic floor and
Right.
your deep abs, yes, it's not a gift to your body to lift heavy. And it's not that you shouldn't, quote unquote, that's
Right.
not it. It's
Right.
it's again tuning into your body and thinking, is my body in condition to do this where I'm not going to be causing harm?
Yeah.
Right.
And listening
Right.
to the cues it's giving you. Yeah. So lifting heavy isn't evil or bad. Running isn't evil or bad. Rebounding isn't evil or bad. But if you haven't functionally re-strengthened your pelvic floor, your outer hips, your deep abs, and your low back extensors, and then you try to go do those things repetitively, damage will be done. It's going to be a torn hip labrum. It's going to be a blown out disc. It's going to be a prolapse diagnosis when you're
Mm-hmm.
60.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
Yikes.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit
This
more
is
about what
amazing.
a prolapse is. What does that mean exactly?
it's like pelvic floor dysfunction gotten worse.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'll get my little model here. So this is like that bowl of the pelvis. We could say here's pelvic floor, and the
Yeah.
organs are like in this little bowl. There's your uterus, bladder's like underneath it up in there, and rectum's back here. So all three of those organs are in a nice little stack in your pelvic bowl, but they are all
Yeah.
supported by soft tissue partitions. There is no bone. So when you add pressure, whether that's from pregnancy or chronic straining or carrying heavy, all of that, and you stretch, stretch, stretch to be pregnant and deliver a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we're having babies older and our tissue doesn't have the bounce back ability it used
Mm.
to, and things don't go quite back how they were before because they were stretched past their ability to recover fully. That connective tissue, then because it's like your scaffolding is damaged, you could
Mm-hmm.
say, that holds your
Mm-hmm.
organs in place. So those
Mm-hmm.
organs start to slip, slide, and fall. That
Mm-hmm.
is prolapse. So it can
Mm-hmm.
happen to the bladder, it can happen to the uterus, it can happen to the rectum. And
Oof.
you don't have to have a diagnosis either to know you have prolapse. Some women do. Some
Mm-hmm.
want the diagnosis. Some women are like, I think I'm dealing with this, but that word freaks me so far out. I don't want to go in a doctor's office. Like,
Sounds
I
like
just
a
want to get
deflated
better.
balloon. Like
Well,
you
it
just
is.
lost your
It is.
your whole uterus. Everything is just bad. Like
It
it
is.
fell.
Well, and
My
look,
grandma had that.
Yeah.
yes,
Oh
yes. And
yeah, she
so
had
like this.
surgery for that.
This
Oh,
is why, well, that's what happened to Jen. So my partner, like I said, her birth was, it was a trauma situation. So her injuries were much more severe than what I sustained. So she was so motivated to find a way to not have major reconstructive surgery. She was diagnosed with stage 2 prolapse of all three compartments.
wow.
And that's,
Mm.
but
Wow.
so she was like, this is not going to be my fate at 36 years old. And then I had kids and needed help too, and different, not the same level of trauma, but like still, again, we don't control all the variables of our births, even if they're natural and doula assisted and non-medical.
Right.
So I still needed help too for symptoms. And we were like, there's got to be a better way. None of what's being offered makes sense. This can't be as good as it gets. And so, with our backgrounds and our personal conviction,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
what set us on this path.
can you just explain what exactly is happening in a surgery then? What are they doing? They're removing parts?
It's
What's
it's
happening?
it's
Oh,
not something.
They're just
So
sewing it up,
you've
pushing
heard
it up.
all the lawsuits about
yeah.
bladder
Yeah.
mesh. You've heard like there's all
Oh,
kind of
no.
that's yeah, they put
Mesh.
foreign objects like a mesh sling, and then they take your connective tissue of like parts of there, and they like staple it to the front of your pubic
Yeah.
bone into your
Yeah.
sacrum to like hold it up with like it's
True.
awful. And
Okay.
the surgeon straight up told Jen, my partner, at this consult, which lit her on fire to not to have this happen to her, was like, and I really hate doing this on women this young because you're just going to need to have it redone in 10 years. There is a 25% failure rate in the medical literature for
Ooh.
these surgeries. And
Oh,
y'all, go look on
oh,
our YouTube
oh.
channel, read the comments under our prolapse teaching videos, and you will be sobbing, crying because
Oh, no.
like I don't want women to end up, so many of them are so far gone that we can't help them anymore
Yeah.
because, you know, but a lot of them aren't. So what I really want women to hear, please don't let it get to that point.
Yeah.
Read
Yeah.
all the comments under our prolapse teaching video if you need to light a fire under your own butt to not end up there.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, the
So,
personal stories women share, first of all, because the way we teach, this is the first time they've felt heard and they've been to six doctors and
Yeah.
they're like,
oh,
no one has explained it this well. Thank you. I'm crying, and this is, and
Yeah.
so, I mean, it's
I'm not
it's a
surprised.
big deal.
Yeah.
It's a
Well, I'm
big
glad
deal.
you explained that because I think that hopefully that will sufficiently scare people. That definitely scared me. So
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like putting
fear
a
mongering.
hammock
We're,
in there. Well,
Yes.
but I think
Yes.
it's important. It's important because people are like, well, I could just get surgery. And that sounds like so
Right.
easy somehow, or something like,
Right.
oh, that's what the doctor does. So that must be the best option. Like they're literally just like stapling and pulling and like
And
really it's
foreign
kind of
mesh.
barbaric.
It
Like,
is, well, and a lot of
Terrible.
surgery is, and look, and I will tell you, thank God
yeah.
for surgeons. Like for those women
Yeah.
who literally their uterus has fallen out of their body,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
they need
Of
that
course.
surgery. Like, so there is a point where God be praised that these surgeons exist and they can do what they can do. However, if you're hearing this and you're like, I don't want to end up
yeah.
there,
Right.
Yes.
Shoot for
Yes.
that. Yeah. Let's shoot for some
Yes.
preventative stuff.
yes.
So where can people find you?
Oh,
Everywhere.
we are
And
everywhere, of course. We are
yeah.
at tightenyourtinkler.com. Also, one of our again, our client named us, but then we came up with our clever tagline, which is silly name, serious results. And
Cute.
so
I
we're at
love that.
tightenyourtinkler.com. We're Tighten Your Tinkler on YouTube. Again, tons of teaching there on every little nuance of what these issues look like, how they feel, how it's all connected, all the terminology that can surround this stuff. And then we're Instagram at tighten.your.tinkler. So we're in all the places and we have an email inbox that is monitored by real people who actually know what prolapse is and pelvic floors. And we will always listen. You will feel heard and cared for with us because we know what this feels like. And we will direct you to the right place with the best of our abilities to get the care that you deserve.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
You guys are the
Oh,
best. I can tell just by
the
the way
best.
how you know
Oh,
everything
so
important
passionate.
to you.
No, they know. They
Yeah,
know.
and
This is
everyone, we're going to
incredible.
link to her quiz so that you guys can get started with the quiz. I think that's the best place to start, and then just
Yes.
on the
And
email
look,
and
if
contact
you
for more.
feel called that this is the way you want to heal, then Biohacking Blondes is a coupon code that just for your listeners will get $50 off that lifetime access to our signature program, which could be the path for you. And if you feel called, that we would love to welcome and walk alongside you.
Amazing. Thank you
Thank
so,
you. This is
so
amazing.
much,
Thank you
Christina. This
so,
has
so
been
much.
fabulous. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we've helped a lot of people today. I think
For
we
sure. I really
I
do.
hope so.
Yeah.
yes, this is huge.
Yes.
Because the taboo subject, a lot of people don't talk about it. So I
And this
think,
all we talk about all day. So
yes.
come on in.
I love
Amazing.
it. I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
Wonderful.
Have
Thank
Thank
a
you so
you.
much.
wonderful
Thank
day,
you.
everyone.
Ciao,
Go to
everyone.
Tighten Your Tinkler.
Ciao. Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.